problems are really a sign of life. If you don't have problems, you probably don't have a pulse.
We've had ups and downs in business like you can't even imagine. We've made millions of dollars. We've lost millions of dollars.
If you're alive, you're gonna face peaks and valleys, but I'm telling you, there is always a light in the tunnel when you know how to navigate it.
We're not happy with what's happening in the world, politically, culturally. We've got atrocities happening. We can camp out in that feeling of being a victim for as long as we want until we realize that that feeling of being a victim is only gonna take us so far.
Welcome to Coaching by the Beach, where we help you materialize the vision you have for your business, your life, your family, and the world. I'm Trevor McGregor, Master Coach.
And I'm Leesa McGregor, international best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur. Together, we've built an 8-figure empire, and we've broken free from the ordinary to lead lives of extraordinary freedom, impact, and fulfillment. And now we're here to guide you to do the same.
If you've been searching for more success, more wealth, and more freedom, tune in and let's embark on this journey together. Welcome to another episode of Coaching by the Beach. I am blessed and grateful to be here with you. My name is Coach Trevor McGregor, and this is my beautiful better half, Leesa McGregor. How are you, Leesa?
I'm fabulous. Thank you.
Well, so good to be here for this show because we've really got so much to share with the listener about, what's really going on in the world right now and how there's so many people navigating adversity, navigating challenges, navigating things where it almost feels like a roller coaster. You go up, you go down, there's a loop-de-loop, you think you're going to fall out, and it's not for the faint of heart. But we also want to share with you some tools, tips, and strategies on how to get on the other side of that and become, as you would say, unstoppable.
Thank you. And this is really near and dear to our hearts. And the reason that it is because every single one of us goes through hard times. Every single one of us is challenged at some point in our journeys. And, the thing that I've learned from this journey is that the things that are the hardest, the moments where you feel like giving up are the moments where you are defining yourself and you've got the ability to make a decision. And what we really want to share in this episode is just our journey and how we've overcome adversity, how we have got to a place where I truly feel like we are unstoppable. I feel like we have realized we've gone through this rite of passage. It is the hero's journey. And if you can actually stay true to the end, if you look at the end, how would you like to tell the story in hindsight? If you can just stay the course, you realize that anything is truly possible. You can overcome anything. And I really mean that. And so let's talk about it in this episode. Let's start with you, honey. I know that this has been a very challenging time. I mean, all of us, especially high achievers, we're so used to kind of hitting those goals and, whatever it is, whether it's revenue targets or, being able to expand our businesses. And now we're living through a time that's incredibly challenging. And you've got entrepreneurs coming to you for help. They're putting up their hands and saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm imploding. And it's, I want to really talk about that. What are you saying to them? How are you helping them in these times?
Well, I love it. And I think the very first thing we have to, define the challenge. And that is it the challenge you're going through or is it the mindset, right? Because we're talking about things such as your career, your finances, that's a big one, your health, your relationships, raising kids today. It's not for the faint of heart, or even dealing with aging parents, right? I know recently, unfortunately, your dad passed away, and unfortunately, we had to navigate that journey. And as your mom gets older and my parents get older, like I said, we've got so much going on. There's so much coming at us. And sometimes it can feel daunting to really even think about, how to survive, let alone thrive. But if there's one thing I know and one thing you know is things don't happen to us, they happen for us, right? And I want to kick it off with a great quote, and then I'll get into some client stories where Napoleon Hill also says that, adversity brings with it the seed of opportunity. And I just love that quote. And I'll say it again because I want to get this in your heads now, that adversity brings with it the seed of opportunity. What does he mean by that? Well, he means that we're all going to navigate the peaks and the valleys of life, the ups and the downs. And in the up times, it feels pretty good, right? You're maybe making money, things are going well in your career, things are good in your health, things are good with your kids, until they aren't. And then you find yourself sliding down the mountain on the other side into what we call the valley. And what's interesting is a lot of people will camp out in the valley, they'll pitch a tent, they'll light a fire, they'll roast marshmallows because it feels good. And it's familiar to us more now as we're all trying to navigate the pandemic and coming out the other side of it. But that's not what high performers do. That's not what, entrepreneurs do, or peak performers or power couples like you and I or anyone that's watching this show. So at the end of the day, the very first thing is to really, stop and remember that no man or woman is an island, and that if you're alive, you're going to face peaks and valleys. You're going to feel like you're going through the ringer. But I'm telling you, there is always a light in the tunnel when you know how to navigate it.
It's absolutely true. And I will share very openly, Trevor and I have been on this journey for 15 years. And this last 4 years, we were faced with some of the greatest challenges we've ever faced. And when I think back now, we're in a place right now, we feel really good. We feel like we have overcome some big challenges. We've had this roller coaster journey. I always laugh and say, it's been a roller coaster pretty well since day one, or we could call it a magic carpet ride if we really want to. And, it's been a journey of testing ourselves, challenging ourselves, falling down, getting back up, failing. Now, I see failure differently now. I used to see failure as defeat. I used to see failure as there's something wrong with me.
Yep.
And I've realized in my wise years now, wow, that was a lie. That was a story that I told myself. Failure is only feedback. And if you decide to let failure take you down for the rest of time, that's your choice. We're making meaning out of every experience. And what I can really say, and this one of the reasons we wanted to do this show, is that it's very hard to see when you're in it, when you're in those challenging times. But the truth is, everything will pass. This too shall pass. Once you get out the other side, you do realize that in some way, shape, or form, it can strengthen you. You can make the decision to make those hard times the greatest times for your development of strength and of character. And I call it spiritual strength training. I think about everything we have been through. We've been through family illnesses. We've been through loss. We lost a pregnancy many years ago, and it was very sad. And we've had ups and downs in business like you can't even imagine. We've made millions of dollars. We've lost millions of dollars,
yes.
Okay? So it's no joke. We've been through it all. We've been through the tunnel. And what we can say is that, it's important to have perspective. It's important to have perspective on the big picture, okay? So whatever you're going through, it's not going to be forever. The difficult times are there to serve as a lesson and again, an opportunity for you to strengthen and move to the next phase. This time that we're living through again, there is nobody in this world right now that is not questioning things. It's like we're not happy with what's happening in the world, politically, culturally. We've got atrocities happening. And the truth is we can either sit and be in despair and feel hopeless and like we can't do anything, or we can really step into our power, step into our higher selves and realize that by us changing ourselves, we also have the capacity to create change in the world and in our circumstances. So, and that goes back to what you're saying. We can camp out in that feeling of being a victim for as long as we want until we realize that feeling of being a victim is only going to take us so far. And we really have to challenge ourselves to say, am I going to stay in the state of being a victim, or am I going to move out of that and move into a powerful state? So let's talk a little bit more about that. I know this is something that you're talking about day in and day out with your clients. Let's talk about that whole victim mentality and why it's important. If you want to become unstoppable, you've got to challenge that.
Yeah, well, it's really true. And I think the big elephant in the room right now for a lot of people is, say, finances. So if you're struggling out there financially, or maybe business isn't as robust as it is, or maybe you're like some of my real estate investors who are doing well, but let's be honest, maybe you're not doing as well as you did in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, because interest rates have gone up or deals are harder to come by. You can either choose to sit on the sidelines and wait until interest rates drop, or you go find the next deal or whatever, or you can start to really get clear on what is it that is the resistance to changing it, or what is the resistance to seeing it through a different lens. And that's when I love what you said there, because there's a great quote that says, every problem is a problem of perspective. And I love that quote. Every problem is a problem of perspective. And we talk about our journey, or I talk about my Fortune 500 clients, my doctors, the attorneys, the entrepreneurs that I coach. Problems are really a sign of life. And if you don't have problems, you probably don't have a pulse, right? So again, at the end of the day, you want to start by getting crystal clear on categorizing the problems that you're having, but don't even call them problems, see them as challenges. For example, you might have a challenge with your finances. You might have had a challenge in your marriage. And who doesn't have dust-ups, right? Right, Leesa?
Who doesn't have dust-ups? And this is the reality that we're always going to be faced with these challenges. We're going to be faced with challenge in our business, our relationships, with our kids.
Yep.
And it's like we have to ask ourselves the question, are we going to be defeated by these challenges, or are we going to give ourselves time and space to heal if it's something traumatic that we've been through? But how are we going to get back on top? How are we going to have that conviction that we can keep going? And especially when you have a young family. I mean, there's nothing like having children to realize that we are here to be the models for them as well. And so it's important for us to realize that if we're going to stay in a low vibration and in a state of feeling defeated, our children are seeing that. They're seeing that as well. And so it's important to not only understand that it's about our journey, but it's about what we're doing and how we're showing up for the world.
That's so good. And again, I can use example after example. I'm coaching a couple currently that literally do real estate and medical spas. So real estate and medical spas in the US. And the first little thing that happens, I mean, it's like they come onto these coaching calls with me and they think that the sky is falling, right? And that's where we often say, and it comes from the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Robbins, to see things as they are, but not worse than they are. That's it. You've got to really start by defining the problem in what we call solvable terms. So if you're having a challenge in real estate, a challenge in the med spa, a challenge with your health, a challenge with your kid, a challenge with anything, again, the very first step is to say, okay, I'm having this challenge, and not to wallpaper over the mold or sweep it under the rug like most people want to do and just go watch Netflix. And I'm not saying Netflix is good or bad, right or wrong. A little bit is okay, but you want to really think about, who am I being in showing up to this challenge? And get curious. Why is this happening? What could this mean? And when you ask better questions for any time you and I have navigated challenges, and you're right, we've been through tons of them, we always start to get better answers, right? So it's not just, why is this happening to me? Or why is God doing this to me? Or I'll never been able to, bounce back from this adversity. It's really, again, starting with seeing it as it is, but not worse than it is, like I do with my clients, that kind of then sets the foundation to go, okay, now that we've kind of cooled our jets, where do we want to go from here? What could we do to move forward? And oftentimes that's asking your favorite question, what's the next logical step?
What's the next logical step? And I think it also, there's something else that when I look back at the most challenging times, there's a couple of things that really stand out. How do we get through it? I think the first thing is sometimes you have to slow down. You've got to stop and you've got to surrender to whatever it is that you're going through in that moment. If it's the hardest time, because the reality is sometimes when we think that we can fix it in that moment, we can't, especially if we're operating from that primal state where we feel like we're in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we're not making effective decisions. We're really not. We're kind of almost digging ourselves deeper into the hole. And every single one of us can relate to this. I mean, it's funny because Trevor and I, when we were at the height of stress in our businesses, what I realized looking back is, oh, wow, like we were having some challenges. We were arguing. We were having a hard time with each other. And actually, it wasn't us. It was the fact that our nervous systems were so dysregulated that we couldn't even have a conversation because it was just like we were just in the fight or flight mode. Yep. And it was only until we actually calmed down, till we actually took some time out and created some space for ourselves that we could see, oh, wait a minute, this isn't a marital problem. This isn't a business problem. This is a nervous system dysregulation problem.
So good.
And I've been so aware of this just ever since that. And I realized that when you're going through the hardest times, one of the most important things to do is to figure out how to take exquisite care of yourself. And that takes time to really work out a plan. Like, what is your self-care plan? How are you going to navigate these times by taking really good care of yourself, by being kind to yourself, by having compassion for yourself? May not be easy to do right when you're in the thick of it, but if you can find a way to cultivate those feelings of compassion and just look at, like, how do I take really good care of myself? If you're feeling burnt out, your number one plan at that burnout moment is not to figure out how to make more money and grow bigger. Your bigger plan is to figure out, like, what am I going to do to slow down, to start taking care of myself so I get out of this burnout state? And, maybe you can speak to that a little bit, honey, because I know you've had a lot of clients going through this. And it's this post-COVID fatigue that we've all kind of experienced.
Well, it's the post-COVID fatigue, and it's also that we carry with it the emotional residue. The emotional residue is really the feeling, the essence, the vibration, really even the frequency of, something happens, we call it cause, that produces an effect, and we kind of let that effect kind of linger much longer than we should. So the very first thing we talk about is, tapping out. That is, don't try to fix it. Don't try to change the world. Don't be a hero, but go and find yourself some quiet space. And you and I do this at least once a quarter, sometimes collectively and sometimes individually, where we need to go away for a day or two. We need to get into nature. We need to hydrate. We need to put on some of our favorite music and listen to what we call our soundtrack of awesome. Because I believe that music is one of the greatest state inducers. And anytime that you and I put on our favorite tunes at Coaching by the Beach, it almost becomes, a party, and it's hard to be in a bad mood. So if the first thing is to really give yourself what we call some space for grace and tap out for a minute, the second thing is to really ask, what's the meaning that I'm making about the situation? You see, we're all meaning-making machines. And I'll tell you, we've got so many meanings that go into everything that may or may not be true. That this is as bad as it's going to get. This is the end. It's over. I quit. When that's not necessarily the true essence of what it is. And Leesa, how many times has the universe given us a life lesson, a money lesson, right? A parenting lesson. 3 beautiful boys, Matthew, Mitchell, and Maxwell. But again, boys will be boys, girls will be girls, and they'll test you from time to time. How about your aging parents? What have they said to you recently that's triggered you, right? Because I could go on and on and on with our story, my client's story, your story, because it's our story. So if number 1 is tapping out, number 2 is really asking yourself, what's the meaning that you're giving this? Before I go to 3, 4, and 5, Leesa, how would you speak to all of that?
Oh, all of it. You're going to be challenged. Life is just, this is it. It's about lessons. It's our soul's journey. Our soul is here to learn certain lessons. That's what I believe. And I feel like, like I said, we either let it defeat us, or we realize that we're going through a hard time and realize that there is a bigger picture at play, that maybe this is a course correction. I know, like, it could be like a universe smackdown, right? Like the universe is saying, this is not for you. Like, how many times do you have to get another sign that it's not for you? And sometimes we've got to realize that, like, okay, we're getting the no's here. We're getting a whole series of no's. Maybe this is a sign that I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe this is a sign that I'm being tested. Do I have the conviction? Do I have the passion, the courage, the commitment to keep going? Because this is what I believe in my heart and my soul. And if that's the case, then you're being tested to get to the next level. And it's really just understanding that this is the journey, right? You've got to have the discernment, and sometimes the discernment doesn't come right away. And you can see that there is a divine unfolding if you really trust the process of understanding that, there's so much at play. And I think, the thing that I realize is that a couple of things, having a vision is very, very important, a vision for your life. And we're going to be talking about this in all of our episodes. It's something that we speak with so much conviction. If you have a vision for your life, you can get through these hard times. You can get through the most difficult circumstances if you have a vision for a brighter future. And so that's the big piece. And the second one is, and when I look back, I go, oh my gosh, like, how much time did I stay in an emotional home that did not serve me? And this goes back to the victim, okay?
Yep.
And I'm not going to say that, it's not like a spiritual bypass where you're just going to pretend everything's fine and, 5 minutes later you're okay. Sometimes it takes time to heal, especially if you've gone through trauma. We've gone through trauma. We've had to take time to heal ourselves, heal our spirit. And that's totally fine. And then you've got to get to a point where you realize, am I going to let this shape me? Am I going to let my identity be the person that was defeated? Am I going to be victimized by this whole circumstance? Or am I going to find a way to create a different meaning and say, this is the greatest challenge and this is going to be the greatest story ever told. This is going to be the greatest story ever told about my life and how I overcame that challenge. And that's when we have to remember that we are all in our hero's journey. We really are. We're all in the hero's journey, and we're going to have these experiences that are going to challenge us to the hilt. And when I look back, the hardest things that I have gone through in my life are the things that allowed me to grow the most. The things that I have gone through that I thought were going to take me out for life, that I thought I was never going to recover. Those are the things that gave me the strength to now be here talking to you and telling you the story that I overcame these challenges. And it's not easy. I am not saying that it's easy. Especially when you've been through a lot. I mean, a lot of people, you get to a point in life where you think, gosh, I wish I was further ahead. Like I thought I was going to be in a different place than I am right now. I thought I was going to be in a better place financially. I thought that my career was going to be better. You know, we're so hard on ourselves. It's like, oh yeah, like let's just crack the whip a little bit more and you know, like make it out like we've just done such a bad job of living our lives. When the actual truth is you can rewrite that meaning and you can say, actually, I'm going to tell a different story from what's happened. This next phase of life is going to be my most magnificent. It's going to be the chapter where I might make the most money and make the most impact. And, you know, this actually comes back to a story. You know, Trevor and I realized something really big in the last couple of years. And I know that a lot of listeners will be able to relate to this. You know, this whole race to success, this whole race to making money and accumulating wealth and becoming financially free, this whole concept of financial freedom. And it's very appealing. It's very alluring. You know, this whole idea of having so much money in your bank that you can do anything. And that is a big piece of what we're talking about in this show. It's about creating a level of freedom. But it depends on how you're doing it. And what we realized is that if you're in a race to make as much money as possible, as fast as humanly possible, you're guaranteed to fall. You're guaranteed to burn out. You're guaranteed, because the reality is that's not how nature works. That's not how life works. And, you know, I realized this with my beautiful husband. I mean, you know, he's been this hardworking entrepreneur. He's spent, 25 years in corporate building an empire, then takes the next decade of his life to build an empire in coaching and mentoring and speaking. And he's done all these amazing things. And I realized when we were at the height of stress with our companies a few years back, and I thought, wow, what is it that's driving this whole situation where we're just getting into this pattern of stress and overwhelm and anxiety? And it actually became very clear to me that, Trevor, your dad had a lot of success and was able to retire at an early age. And so I think what happened at that time, and tell me if I'm right. I mean, you had an unconscious driver there. It was like, well, wait a minute, my dad retired at this age. He was retired by the time he was 50. So I have to get to that point where I retire. Like, that is it. I need to be financially free by this date and this age, and this is it, right? And how's that working for anybody, really? We realized that actually when you retire, you expire. Because the truth is, you can get to that level, and you ask any entrepreneur that's cashed out, that's made hundreds of millions of dollars, you can only spend so much time sipping Mai Tais on a tropical island and buy the Ferraris and whatever else, the mansions, all that stuff. You're going to get to a point where you're like, okay, what's next? Yeah. So why are we in such a race to make it all happen in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years? What if we were to take a different standpoint to how our life unfolds, right? And now, like, I actually have a very different thought process around this. I'm looking at myself as a woman in her 40s going, wow, like, I literally have decades of work behind me, okay? I can choose to retire at this point. I can choose to do that. I can choose to live a life of freedom where I don't do anything else. Or I can choose to say, I want my life to be exciting. I want to be in the playground. I want to be in the game. I want to stay in the game. And I want to do things that are going to be exciting and fun. And it's going to be, being a living example for our family. And so I've realized that my life's work is probably going to be another 20 to 30 years. Like, it's not stopping now. And so what if you were to take a look at this thing that you think is stopping you, or this place that you're at in your life? Like, what can you do to reframe that story and say, oh, wow, like, I might feel defeated right now, but how much more life ahead of me do I have to accomplish these goals and dreams? And I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that, honey.
Well, you're absolutely just, again, speaking from a place of truth. I'll just say it's pure truth, because whether it's you or I or our clients, it's really finding that work-life balance. And I think most people think that they got to drive 90 miles an hour in order to make a certain amount of money. Kind of like I did, maybe consciously or subconsciously, with my father, or you with some of your mentors, or, even some of the people that we work with. They've got big dreams, big hopes, big desires to be a billionaire, right? But do you really need to be a billionaire? And some of you might want to chase that. And some people go, no, 10 million is enough. 50 million's enough. 3 million's enough, whatever it is. We've all got our number, right? And that really then speaks to what I was going to say was step 3, which you've already spoken about, which is identity. You got to choose whether you're going to come from a place of being the victim and trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to keep up with everyone else around you, or you step into your higher self where you're the victor. Because it's really that third position of being, I'm a victor, knowing that if I keep doing what Lisa's saying, keep doing what Trevor's saying, keep reading the books, listening to the podcasts, going to the events, really reinventing myself and my why, that's when sparks fly and the magic happens, because you start to see through a different lens. You start to hear through a different set of headphones. You start to feel with different fingertips, and you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together to climb out of the valley and start climbing back up the mountain. So if number 1, again, is to see it as it is, that not worse than it is, maybe tap out and take a break. Number 2 is to really, remember that every problem is a problem of perspective, and that you can see it through a new lens by changing the meaning of what is going on for you. The third thing is to really step into that higher identity, no differently than, say, Walt Disney did. I mean, here's a guy that was trying to build a theme park in a swamp, and everyone laughed at him. Or Steve Jobs saying this Macintosh computer is going to be in every home in America. Yeah, right. Or Elon Musk, I'm going to put man on Mars. Yeah, right. But it's really the crazy and the misfits that ultimately end up doing something that changes the world. So that really leads us to step 4, which is to really remember that we all have options, right? We all have options. If you have one choice in terms of how to become unstoppable, you have no choice. There's nothing to choose from. 2 choices is better yet, but that's a dilemma, Lisa. That's A or B. What you and I often will do with clients is get them to come up with 3 choices or more, because now you've got real options, real choice. You could go this way to get there. You could go this way. You might have to back up a few steps to go 5 steps forward. But for the committed, there's always a way. So as you step into step 3 and then step 4, owning your identity, figuring out what options are available to you, we all know what number 5 is, and that is execution. Execution. And not just, I'm going to try. It's like, I've got this. I'm doing it. I will. And that's really where I say that people are interested in success, or they're committed to success. And here's the difference. For people that are interested in success, they'll do what's convenient. But for people that are committed, they'll do whatever it takes. And for Lisa and I, and helping people all over this planet, we help them become what we call defiantly committed. So there's a lot to unpack there, but how would you speak to that?
I love that so much. And we're going to be talking about this in future episodes. Now, when we say defiantly committed, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go back and get into a pattern of hustle and grind again, where you just grind yourself down again and into a pattern of stress and overwhelm and anxiety. And we're not saying that at all. We're going to be talking about that. Like, how do you design your life in such a way where you're in the flow, you're in your zone of genius, you're working from your zone of genius? And I think that's very important. And that is what this is about. Like, life is a journey of refinement. Life is a journey of working out what is true for us. What are we good at? What are we great at? How can we dial in our zone of genius and only be working from that zone of genius, and not pretending that we're good at other things and try to do other things that don't serve us and don't serve the higher vision and purpose for what we're here to do. So again, we're going to be talking about that. But I think the big thing to take away from this is that whatever you're going through right now, whatever the challenge is, how can you find a way to detach from it a little bit and not make it like there's something wrong with you and something wrong with how you're approaching the situation? If I look back and I think about my journey, and we've had financial loss, we've started businesses that have not worked out, we've made investments that have absolutely gone south and we lost our money. We've done these things. And do we make it about do we have a choice in that moment? Are we going to make ourselves wrong? Are we going to say, oh gosh, I was so stupid to have done that? Or are we just going to realize that that's part of the journey and that's part of the lesson, and we're not going to make that mistake again? Or maybe we are going to make that mistake again, and then we're going to learn the second or the third time not to make that mistake again. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn and experience these things. And so don't make yourself wrong is really my advice on this show, is don't make yourself wrong. Find a way to create a new meaning for what you're going through, and know that this too shall pass.
That's it. And it really reminds me of one of our favorite quotes. In fact, this is the quote I have on the top of my Facebook header, and it comes from Mr. Jim Rohn, where he says, and if you don't know Jim Rohn, he's Tony Robbins' first coach, and he said that it's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you end up, it's the set of the sail. And again, one of my favorite quotes, it's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you end up, it's the set of the sail. And who's responsible for setting your sail? Well, you are. I'm responsible for mine. Lisa's responsible for hers, but we're also collectively responsible for each other. And here at Coaching by the Beach, that's exactly what we do. Whether it's a takeaway that you're getting from this show, or you're doing some coursework with us, or, we can't wait to host you at one of our retreats in a beautiful, breathtaking place somewhere on this planet, but the learning and the growing never stops. And again, we're here on purpose and with purpose to remind you that you're powerful, that the potential that exists in you is unparalleled. And maybe you haven't arrived where you want due to some peaks and some valleys, and maybe more valleys than peaks, but we can assure you that you are exactly where you're meant to be.
I love that so much. So why don't we wrap up the show? We'll give our 3 to thrive and just really invite everybody that's listening to start thinking about this. Like, just get out your journal, start journaling on these questions. I tell you, you're going to have so many insights about your life. I think the first question I would ask is, how do you want to tell the story? So whatever the challenges that you're going through, how do you want to tell that story in 10 years' time? If you start to journal that, you are literally you're setting an intention for how that story is going to turn out. So I encourage you, for anything that you've gone through or anything that you're currently going through, ask yourself that question: how do I want to tell the story in 10 years' time? And start writing about that.
Yeah, that can be very, very powerful. It's almost like stepping out of the familiar past and into the present to create the predictable future. Here's how I navigated it. Here's how much money I've made. Here's, how I've, created beautiful children or supported my aging parents. Whatever it is, remember, the human brain doesn't know what's real and what's fictitious. So take Lisa's advice and do what she does a lot, which is a ton of journaling. What's question number 2?
I'd like to leave that with you, sweetheart.
Well, question number 2 is to really think about, where in your life have you faced adversity before? Think about that right now, and think about a time where maybe you went through a tough time, or maybe you were going to go get your driver's license and you failed. Or maybe you were going to backpack around Europe and you didn't know how you were going to pay for it. Or maybe you were going to go up and ask someone to marry you and they thought, oh my God, there's no way this person is going to say yes. And yet you had the doubt, the fear, the worry, or anxiety, but you went and did it and you actually succeeded, right? Because I'm telling you, every single thing that you want exists right now. And sometimes you got to go back and look at other times in your life that maybe you had a bit of a hiccup, but now fast forward, you drive a car, you've been in an airplane, you've raised children, you've made money. And I'm telling you, if you can do it once, you can do it twice. So get clear on the back to the future and have fun with that. Lisa, number 3.
I think I'm going to go back to this whole concept of the gap versus the gain. So again, journal on the things that you have overcome in your life, and what are you proud of? What are you most proud of? I mean, sometimes when we're in our darkest moments, we have to remind ourselves of the things that we have done, the person that we really are, who we really are. And so ask yourself that question, like, what are the things I have done? If you look back over the last 10, 15, 20 years of your life, what have you accomplished? You've got to remind yourself of your strength. You've got to remind yourself of your power. And it's very important for us to do this, especially if you're an entrepreneur, or especially if you are, in a career that's really challenging you at the moment. You've got to remind yourself what you're made of. So just take that time to reflect on your journey and just start to strengthen yourself, start to strengthen your identity and your character, and realize that you will overcome whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah, I love that. And a little bonus coaching on that. Don't just focus on the gap of how far you are from where you need to be. Also, give yourself some credit. Focus on the gain. How much, have you studied? How much have you learned? How much have you tried, right? And I think that that's a beautiful concept that if you really apply it to those 3 to thrive questions, you're going to start to come up with even better answers and really start seeing the future in a better light. So with that said, we hope that adds a ton of value to you. We are just so blessed and grateful for all of the feedback that we're getting, the emails, the direct messages, the texts. I mean, oh my gosh, we are feeling the love. Are you feeling the love?
I'm feeling the love. It's wonderful.
She is feeling the love. So keep it coming. If you have any thoughts on any comments or any episodes you'd like us to talk about, drop us a note. We'd love to engage with our community, and we'd love to absolutely continue the journey with you. So with that said, Leesa,
Peace, love, and palm trees.
take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today at Coaching by the Beach. If this episode helps you to see your path to more success, more wealth, freedom, and fulfillment, we'd love your support.
Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
And don't let your journey stop here. Connect with us in our community of like-minded achievers on all social platforms at Coaching by the Beach.
We're excited to continue exploring this path to freedom with you.